Everybody for tuning in to Coder Conversation. Once again, if you missed any of our previous episodes, visit us at www.coderconvos.com. Tonight we have Tom Sherman, 3X founder, ex NASA, ex Merrill Lynch, and much more. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks
Awesome.
for coming on.
And we also have our co-host Brian Russick.
How you doing? Brian here. I am a professional musician, professional drummer, and drum teacher based in the Suffolk County, Long Island, New York area. I could be found on the web at brianrussick.com.
Awesome. So yeah, Tom, just to get it started, man, you have a really very interesting background. So can you kind of give us the progression of what led to you having your current company?
Sure. So it all started. Yeah, we got time. I'll take you way back. It all started at
Yeah.
the junior year at my wrestling team's state tournament when my coach walked in and found us drinking a bottle of liquor. And it happened to be I was holding the bottle of liquor. Happened to be I brought that bottle of liquor, and ended up
Yeah.
yeah ended up uh, leading on to a chain of events that I ended up getting expelled from school and was kind of I was kind of at a dead end, so to speak.
Wow.
I could transfer to, so it was my junior year. We were thinking about college transcripts and stuff like that. I could transfer to another school, but they were on a like a different system, like a quarter system versus a trimester system or something. So I basically would have had a fully incomplete year. Long story short, I decided to get my GED and go to community college and sort of fast track it. And that's exactly what I did. Is instead of senior year, I took a full course load at Northern Virginia Community College, and um, by the time that it was a year and a half, 2 years or so. And
Right.
so through there, I at the time I was studying finance and I wanted to get into finance. And so that's what led me into a work study program at Merrill Lynch. And it was January 2007, which is sort of wild to look back on because it was like the peak of it all before
It
it kind of started
was.
crashing down.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was. Yeah,
it
right.
it it was and there were some things like looking back every now and again, I'm like, wow, that was, you know, like one of my bosses at the time was like, hey, like this real estate like investment trust, it's a no-brainer, it's always going to go up, like don't worry about it, like it's a home run hit. And you're like, wow, like man, these guys are really smart. And then you fast forward a year and a half and
2008, 2009.
yeah,
Yeah, the
2008, and it's all
crash.
it's all blowing up. And
Yeah.
what was what was interesting about that is, so then I had transferred to the College of William and Mary, and I was studying finance still. And I was in my 8 a.m. bonds class, and my professor walks in, and he was like, "Yeah, so uh, we've got like we're going to learn in this chapter why you should never see negative interest rates. It's just never going to happen. Um, However, we do currently see negative interest rates, but like it's fine. We're just going to learn this, and like no worries, we'll figure it out later."
Yeah.
And it just kind of struck a weird chord with me, where it was like, this is a moment where like we should be tearing up the textbook if it's completely wrong and rewriting it, rebuilding it, and yet
Yeah.
we're just going to kind of sweep it under the rug and pretend like nothing ever happened.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, it was definitely an enlightening time. And so that's sort of where I that was another sort of one of those moments in time that I stopped um having such a reverence for the finance industry as I had, prior, and started questioning more and more about what are we doing? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing the things that we do? And sort of you know pulling a bit more at some of the strings of these things, and searching for a bit deeper truths out there.
Kind of more of a philosophical view.
Hmm. Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, it's but that's that in the end. That it is sort of all that because you know finance is about money, and what is money is one of those sort of bedrock uh questions that people kind of deal with all the time. And you know even nowadays you talk to somebody about crypto, it's like, is crypto money, is it not money, is it a sound fungible thing that you can transfer that actually stores value, or is it an algorithm that we store on a server, and people will pay for it, so it is valuable. And
Right.
so there's yeah.
Yeah, something I've heard in the finance because before I got into software, that's what I was also looking to get into. There's something called a rational exuberance where people they just buy stocks because everybody else is buying. And it's almost like a pyramid scheme.
Mm,
Everybody's going off the hype of everybody else, even if the PE ratios don't make any sense.
right. Yeah, and that's exactly what you know that's where the money is made too, is getting people hyped up on the fear of missing out. And then you do miss out, and you're like, oh man, so next time. It's sort of fascinating to watch. And it was one of those things back when it's 2000 again, 2007. It was I see a lot of that sort of transferred into like gambling markets nowadays, where
Yeah.
I never had gambling lines running across ESPN 24/7 when I was watching it growing up. And like now there's it's a multi-billion dollar market. And finance definitely taps into that. And it used to tap into that in a being the cleaner, more legal way to do it. And so
Sure.
yeah, there's I saw in when we were in college, there was in one of our ethics courses, we learned that the part of the brain that gets triggered when you do cocaine is the same part of the brain that gets triggered when you make money, when you get a paycheck or you get handed $100 bill or whatever. And so and that was like one of the lesson takeaways, is like that's why there's sort of that stigma of cocaine being rampant on Wall Street. Is you lose money, you make your brain feel like you made money, everything's fine,
Yeah, everything's
and
fine.
then you just, but it's always going to go. And so that's also the interesting thing that's happened since 2008 is it's the bull market is just so strong. And it's the mindset is, I mean, if if we're all going to lose all of our money and we all go broke, and the system collapses, then like why not buy? And it's
Right.
like it's just completely upside down and backwards compared to what what sound investing used to be.
What it
And
used to be. Yeah.
yeah, it's the wild west out there all over the place. It's wild.
Yeah, the kind of logic that I was raised on, reading Warren Buffett and people like that, pretty much take your emotions out of the equation. And when people are selling, that's where there's good buying opportunities, and vice versa. You got to kind of go against the crowd to find those bargains.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and you got to do stuff like what Warren Buffett was doing, and just stockpiling cash when everyone's telling you buy. You know what I mean? What are you doing
Yeah.
holding on to cash? Buy. But
Right.
there's always there's always a good time. You can always buy. You can always sell. You know what I mean? There's never you haven't made or lost money until you
There's
sell.
always another opportunity
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah, exactly. So I say that to my wife all the time, where every now and again we're talking about, should we invest a bunch in Bitcoin or whatever, and
Yeah.
she'll be like, oh, we missed it. And I'm like, we didn't miss it. Like, you know what I mean? It's gonna go, like, it's gonna keep going up, keep going down, keep going up, keep going down. That's that's the nature of just markets. And so it's never too late to get in. But
Yeah, I
I
think
don't know.
markets investing is just as much as about psychology as it is like math and all of this other stuff because when people are rational, that's when you get the bargain. So like you
Mhm.
mentioned, if you have a bunch of cash, you can foresee kind of the market crashing, everybody's selling, panic selling, then there's a whole bunch of opportunities there and you got the cash to buy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, there's some of the best ways I've ever played the stock market has just been, you watch the news and you see some bad news and like you just buy into it because it's like it was like McDonald's was quarter pounder with cheese had onions that was giving everybody, I don't know, listeria, salmonella or something, and it's like, that's not taking out McDonald's. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. So like they're down 10%, buy it. You know what I mean? Buy it, and people are still going to buy quarter pounder with cheeses. And so
Yeah.
I I've definitely sort of um I don't, I've really taken a big step back from finance in general as like a, I yeah, as a industry in general. And but like, yeah, sometimes there that's that's the easy way to make plays sometimes. And like, it's like Facebook when they went down initially. It's like Facebook's going to
Yeah.
be here forever. They have all of our
Forever.
data. Like,
Yeah,
like
forever.
what are we, like, so yeah, I don't know. But I should say all none of this is financial advice, right? Like I've got to cover my legal basis here. I don't know what I'm talking about with the market. Like, you know what I mean? Like you don't want to invest in my portfolio. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I read I heard about, I don't know if I read it, a book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It's written by a guy named Burton Malkiel. He pretty much said that you'll beat most funds just by throwing darts at, like
mm,
darts at a list of companies. So it's best to invest in like an index fund versus trying to time the market, beat the market, because more times than not, you'll lose.
mhm,
Yeah.
definitely. And that's the, but that's also the sort of boring, you know what I mean? The boring play is to save X% of your paycheck and put it into an index fund and not look at it and not stress about it. The fun stuff is to pick some random company that makes widgets that you like and it's 10 cents. So if it goes up to $1, you know what I mean, you're quitting your job.
Yeah, or
That's the
like,
fun part.
trading options, stuff like
Hmm.
that.
I think what
Yeah.
kind of moved me away from finance was you don't really know if your philosophy works until years later, until
Hmm.
the investments start manifesting their results, which could be good or bad. So
Right.
you
Right.
just kind of take an educated guess until then.
Right. Yeah, it's and that is one of those things that's tough about it is the long game and having the patience to sit through it. I also, it's one of those things where I at some point I was like, do I really want to invest in these companies? Do I really want to be somebody that's responsible for X, Y, and Z that's happening in the name of my profits as a shareholder, my dividends that I'm getting, or whatever return I'm getting.
Right.
And so it's it's stuff to think about. It's stuff to deal with. It's and like you said, that's why it is a philosophical sort of endeavor at some point where if your philosophy is make money at all costs and ends justify the means and you're in it for for whatever you need to get X dollars, then you're going to invest a lot differently than
Oh yeah.
someone else that has a different
Big
different
time.
worldview of whatever, however
Yeah, big
companies
time.
and stakeholders need to have their relationships with each other.
Right.
Yeah, I think the stock market makes it like really easy to kind of divorce yourself from what these companies are actually doing and how they're affecting society because it's just kind of like oh, I go on Robinhood or whatever, dump in 500 to an index fund, and you don't know
Hmm.
what companies they're going into, but
Right.
Right.
what are these companies doing?
Right. But that's and that's, yeah, that's exactly it. Is um Yeah, that's exactly it. And I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
have the answer.
I don't have
I
the
don't have the
answer,
answer to all
man.
that. But it's
Yeah.
it's out there.
So, like, what did your pivot out of finance look like? What did you navigate to next?
So basically, I decided I wanted to become a rogue inventor and start I basically started keeping a notebook and a journal of some different ideas and research and whatnot. Professionally, I started working in events and communications, and dabbling a bit in stand up comedy.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, it was because it was one of those things that I was most fearful of, was public speaking. And but then I'd also randomly come across old notebooks here and there where I would like have started writing jokes. And I was like, dude, I'm gonna, like, if I don't do this now, I'm gonna snap, and that's gonna be my midlife crisis when I'm like 55. Is So like I was like, I'm just gonna get this out
Yeah.
of the way. um and uh so yeah, so I was doing events and comedy, and
Now, what
working
type? When
on
you say comedy, what kind of comedy?
like stand up comedy,
um, doing like the yeah, like a opener, headliner, etc. type
Yeah.
stuff. I actually ended up getting more into running open mics. So what one of the interesting things to me about comedy is it's like this like uh it's like related to music, like, but it's also like this like weird cousin that is not like music at all, where if you want to be a musician, you can go to a music store, you can like hire a music teacher, you can go to music open mic nights. Like there's a lot of avenues to learn the craft and the trade. um but with stand-up comedy, there's none of that. It's basically you have to find an open mic if there's one nearby you, which a lot of times closest one to a random person listening out in America might be like hour and a half, 2 hours away.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
so you got to find an open mic, you got to go to it, and then you got to learn this unwritten series of rules that are super serious. Otherwise, you get ostracized from the local community scene forever because you didn't know, and like a sort of easy example I like to talk about is like covers, where a musician covers a song all the time. Like some bands out there, that's what they're best known for, is a cover of another song. But like if you do a street joke or take somebody else's joke and do it on stage as your own, like you get kicked up and down the street, and you know what I mean. It's no mercy. It's brutal.
Yeah. Like you get blacklisted.
Yeah, and there's no, you know what I mean? Like it's tough to do because, one of the best ways to learn is to, practice somebody else, you know what I mean? Practice something good that is good. And, um, it's like, there's like an expectation, like if you're a musician going to open mic night, you have to play 15 originals every time you show up. It's crazy. So anyways, I started uh, running open mics, and we started a foundation around here in Delaware and Maryland, called Mooncat Comedy Club, where we, sort of explicitly, that's our goal, is to create a community within stand up comedy, and also just get stand up comedy out into the community, because it's also one of these interesting art forms that there's, most things aren't live, like the audience response.
Yeah.
If somebody's listening to the podcast, they're not going to be able to talk to us. We've already said this and it's been recorded for like TV and all that. But with comedy, stand-up comedy, like, you need that audience because you only know if your joke is working if they laugh.
If they
And
laugh.
so without them laughing, you've got nothing. And that's,
Yeah.
we did like when the pandemic hit, we tried some Zoom comedy stuff, and it was just a disaster. Like, because
Yeah.
like
What was that like?
it was, it was just like, because everyone had their mics on mute or their cameras off or both, and so then you're just like, you're doing your set into nothing. It felt a lot like, um, when I worked at the radio station for a bit, and it felt like that, where you're sitting in this empty room and you're saying stuff, and you have no idea. You have no idea if anybody's listening, anybody's laughing, anybody cares,
Right.
and it's tough. It's bad for it was bad. So we did like two of those shows, and then
Yeah,
Scrapped it.
put that
Yeah.
down until live events came back.
with you on the radio, how did you deal with the lack of feedback? Like, how did you know? Okay, I'm firing on all cylinders here.
Um, so yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the first things I did was, first I just treated it like how I would want the radio to be, the news radio to be read to me, which was, a little bit different than, or at the time it was basically all like crime or fire stories, and it was heavily focused on the like two or three beach towns in the listening area. But the listening area hits, what I mean, like four states and, three, or 30 some cities and towns. And
Oh wow.
so I kind of rebalanced the news coverage to focus on, um, the entire geography of the listening area, and also balanced out, the broadcast a bit, where I would still do a crime and fire story. Those are, what I mean, those are the ones that get the hits on the social media. People like it.
Sure.
But I would only do one. You know what I mean? One per news read. So then there were three other stories that need to be filled, and kind of came up with a balance of, either an economic story, local economics, agriculture, environmental health, and just kind of did a more holistic approach to the news. And uh, we it worked. I knew it was working because, um, actually, because you did start to hear feedback and see feedback from, people calling into the main radio show, and referencing something that had been said in the news hour, or, there was, just the number of sort of hits that come up on some of the news stories, on the
Or
social
now, how
media.
about like the Nielsen ratings?
Yeah, uh, I mean, our radio station wasn't, uh, like, so we were a super small station. Long story short, is
Yeah.
we didn't even register. We registered on the Nielsen ratings on like one show, on the noon show, which was a syndicated program that we streamed out. But like, we were going up against, like, large, you know people that had seven radio stations in the area type stuff, and we were
Yeah.
just a single, single one. So,
I see.
um, but we also, we were voted, best in Delaware, to 2018, 2019, because of, Ford News Radio. And it's one of those things that you definitely saw people, you saw the feedback, even if it wasn't super direct. Although there was, so one thing I did do that I was one of my favorite things was I started doing honey news stories on Friday. Just like So there was one about a deer that got loose in the ocean. There was a deer in the ocean in Ocean City, Maryland, and they called the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard's
Wow.
wrangling this deer, and I just loaded it up with, the buck stops here, I don't know, all these silly puns. And somebody called in and requested to talk to me, and they were like, "You got to cut it out with those puns, buddy." And
Oh, that's great.
I was like, I am onto something. If I got a story
you're
that
onto
makes
something.
you so mad, you pick up the phone and call me. Like that's,
Well, there's
so
that saying. There's that saying that haters make you famous. You have people that are hating on you. You're probably doing something right.
there you go. Yeah, that's sort of it. Is all feedback is good feedback, because they're telling you something, and so you also just have to kind of assume though that for every time somebody calls in angry, there's at least one other person that made their day or something.
Is happy
You're not
about.
calling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Exactly.
So it's a lot easier to get negative feedback in than positive feedback. I've found is
Yeah. It seems like the negative people, they actually, they're the ones that actually call in and come after you, while the quiet ones, they're just, I mean, the people that like it, they're just quiet and enjoying the show.
right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the people that are bitter that seem to find the time to make you
Right.
bitter. It's unreal.
They find the time somehow. Exactly.
did
Yeah.
it ever get to you, like people just calling in and kind of being nasty, or were you just able to not
Um.
take it personal?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's one of the things that stand up really helped me with, um, personally and professionally, is the crowd will give you their feedback. They will let you know exactly how they feel,
Yeah.
at that moment. And so, all you can do is take the feedback, process it, and you get to decide whether or not it's valid, how valid it is, and that sort of stuff. Um, and so, I have no problem with people telling me, however they feel about anything, because that's just, that's all life is one big feedback loop. And so, you know, um, all you can do is take the signals that you're being given, and try to figure out what it means, and use it positively to and better your life type stuff.
That's awesome. So you were doing the comedy. How did you get involved with NASA?
Um, well, so yeah,
It's a little
that's
bit of a jump, right?
well, actually, you mentioned it. When we first founded the comedy club, NASA, there's a Wallops, the base down here. There's Wallops Island. They shoot off satellites. They did have Mooncat Comedy Club to come do a show at their rocket club once.
Oh
So
wow.
that was our first that was our first foray into NASA, sending jokes to the moon. But no, you're talking about the Solar System Ambassadors program,
Yeah.
that I joined. I think I was in like 2019 or so. And so, all right, so long story short, I was disillusioned with the finance industry. I was being a rogue inventor. I had my notebook full of ideas. I was working communications, blah blah blah. And one of the things that I've been researching for a long time was time, and specifically the calendar, because like the Gregorian calendar is just kind of a mess, right? Where how long is a month? Nobody really knows. It's how many days, how many weeks are in a month? It's like 4 point something or other. Um, today is there's a slow shifting of days between the year, where if today is Tuesday, uh, April 29th, next year April 29th isn't going to be a Tuesday. It's going to be a Wednesday or a Thursday. And so, anyways, there's a lot of problems with the calendar. I was looking into why exactly that is, and sort of went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and was yeah. Anyways, here was the eureka moment. Was basically I missed a bill payment, right, and the bank said I had like 5 days to get the funds into the account. Otherwise, they'd charge me an extra sum. And so I go in on Monday. I give them the cash, and they said, "Oh no, you missed. The last business day was Saturday.
Yeah.
So and so that was what broke me. Was I was like, all right, this calendar has got to go. It's killing me for the last time. And so I'd come to a conclusion where if there's 365 days in a year, then you can only divide 365 into smaller units using the numbers 5 and 73. Those are its only two base factors. Okay, so any other number that we've tried to divide a year up by 7 or 12 or 2 or 10, you'll always end up with some sort of remainder amount or leftover amount of days, and you can't make even units. Um,
Interesting.
one of the problems with that is 5 and 73 are very, they're prime numbers. They're weird to work with. So it's kind of easy to just discount that as a valid, premise at all. So I'd gotten to that point and I threw it away and kept researching. But anyways, on this day, I came home, I took the calendar off my wall, and I started labeling from 1 to 73 starting on the winter solstice. All right. So the shortest day of the year, December 21st, 73 days out is March 3rd. And I was like, all right, that's kind of, a decent winter time. That March area is early springish. Sure. The next 73 days went from March 4th until May 15th. And I was like, yeah, that's, your classic sort of spring. And then, that mid May is Memorial Day. That's that unofficial start of summer that we always observe, anyways. Um, then this is what blew my mind was the middle period of the year, the third period of the year, the exact middle day landed on the summer solstice. So that's when it all kind of clicked that like our Earth's orbit around the sun actually makes a lot more sense if we sort of step back and observe it through its own um, own objective rules rather than kind of force our rules onto it.
Right.
So the third period of the year went from May 16th until July 27th, with that exact middle day on June 21st. The fourth period of the year went from July 28th until October 8th, and this is quote unquote the new season of the year that I discovered. I like to call it autumn, and it's like an inverse of spring. So it's like your late season crops are coming in: the sweet corn, the watermelon, tomatoes. The migrations are starting to reverse. You get those long, hot August nights, rather, because we're past the solstice, and so like you start to see that lengthening of the night. We're getting hurricanes instead of nor'easters on the coast here, and so that's the quote unquote new season of the year. And then October 9th to December 20th was the final period, and that's your classic leaves turn brown, fall on the ground. And then you start back up again at the first of winter on December 21st. So it turns the calendar into a true measurement system that you can actually measure concise periods of time with uniformity consistently. And it's also a perpetual calendar where once you get to the end of it, you can flip right back, start it over again. You don't need to buy a new calendar, transfer all your data to the next set.
Oh, wow.
Because our Gregorian calendar, it's actually technically there's 7 different calendars because you can start the year on any day of the week, from Monday through Sunday. And then there's also 7 more calendars for a leap year. A leap year can start on any day of the week from Sunday to Monday. So you got 14 calendars that you cycle through on a 6-year, 11-year, 11-year rotation, where today's day and date will only repeat either 6 years from now or 11 years from now or 11 years from then, and before it, resyncs
Oh, wow. Okay.
to the days and the dates.
That's interesting.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, anyways, so that was the
So
invention.
did that like fascinate you, or did you get really into the numbers? What was it that made you want to focus on this?
I really wanted to focus on time because it was, it's one of these things that like drives our life, right? Like the calendar, the day of the week, it's so crucial to everything we do, and yet it's so mysterious. We don't know what time is. We act like it's this weird slippery substance that we can't control, and it acts on us. And so I was just curious about what are we talking about? What are we doing? How did we get here? And it's a fascinating, it was a fascinating rabbit hole to go down because it's so complex, and it spans so much. It's not just math, it's not just science. There's a lot of history involved. I mean, the calendar that we use is 3,000, its origin is 3,000 years old, and it's been updated,
Wow.
once every 500 years, like 6 times,
Right.
so um it's just a really fascinating sort of subject. And then when you know we have this imperfect solution, and so then the obsession sort of became, so all right, I've deconstructed the calendar, you know what do I do now? How do I reconstruct the calendar? And so from that eureka moment, I took a deep dive into patent patent law and intellectual property, and that sort of stuff. I wrote a patent for the patent office as a pro se inventor, and that was, it was fascinating in its own right, because instead of just sort of, you know previously to that moment, it's like, what is time? It was a philosophical journey as much as it was anything else. But then what running through the patent process really was helpful for was, it forces you um, to think deeply about your product or your patent. And not only that, it forces you to confront all of your competitors. And so
Yeah.
uh, it's one of those things that's easy to shy away from, is researching who else is out there, what they're doing, and how it impacts you. But if you want your stuff to get taken seriously at the patent office, you have to do that. And by doing that, it actually forces you to make your ideas better, stronger. It forces you to advocate for them. And why is this different than the way someone else did it? Or why am I doing it like this that makes it unique? So that was a whole other, yeah, that process in and of itself, of the re-engineering of it, was just another fascinating part of it.
Yeah.
And
That sounds
yeah,
unique.
yeah, it was. So then by the end of that, it was basically 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I woke up 2 years ago by, and I had this new calendar that I'd invented. And so since it's the calendar is a solar based calendar, the Gregorian calendar is. And there's lunar calendars out there, there's lunar solar calendars out there. And so that's part of the science and the physics of it that makes the calendar so interesting to me. And that's kind of how I got hooked into the NASA Solar System Ambassador Program. Was I was just advocating about time and the seasons, and how our Earth interacts with our solar system, and and I'm not actually sure how I heard about them, but I applied. I applied and got in, and basically, we hold, or as a solar system ambassador, you hold a few events every year, and they NASA gives you sort of updates on a lot of their uh, projects, that spacecraft that are getting launched here and there, or updates on research, and yeah, it's a really fascinating program.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, like with something like creating a new calendar, how do you either monetize it or build enough consensus to where people actually start using it?
Yeah, that's that's a great question. I will let you know. No, so there's there's a lot of paths towards monetization. Um, Currently, I mean, this is part of the overwhelming part, is, to me personally, is I have this calendar, and I view time as a measurement, right? And so all of our other measurement systems were created after the scientific revolution, which is why they follow certain rules. Like, you always have the same amount of something in a unit. Ice is always 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It's
Yeah.
always 0 degrees Celsius. There's no variation. Um, there's always, so larger units fit within larger units, and smaller units fit within larger units. So, there's always 3 feet in a yard. There's no 2.5 feet in 1 yard.
Yeah.
So time is a measurement to me, and that's where. Uh, what was the question? Holy shit! I'm so sorry. Oh, can I? I'm
Oh
sorry.
yeah, like how do you either monetize it or just get
Yeah.
enough consensus for people to use it?
Right. So time is a measurement system. So therefore, like, this calendar, it analyzes, it tracks, and it records data in a more concise, more efficient manner than the other calendar. So therefore, any way the other calendar is used, the new calendar will be able to come in and do it better. So, but then that's like, when you step back and look at how many things the calendar touches, it's massive. You know what I mean? Like, every industry uses a calendar in its own way. Every product, computers are basically a calendar. I mean, that's what all Unix code is a timestamp from January 1, 1970, and it's counting up, 1 second at
Yeah.
a time. That's where all of our timestamps are from.
Right.
So,
Right.
so the path to like the potential of monetization is vast. The path is a little bit harder. What I did initially is I created a wall calendar, an analog wall calendar. It comes with a user guide, and basically it's like a novelty. It's a novelty product to just kind of get the concept out there. It was to test its market viability to a degree, and it got met with rave reviews. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
I've done a lot of entrepreneurship. I've done a lot of, starting projects, starting foundations, starting this and that, and this was one that it captivated people's imaginations every time. Everybody's got an issue with the calendar that they, don't like, or something, or that's wronged them in the past, some way, shape, or form. And like I said earlier, it's this slippery substance. Nobody knows what it is, and so that's why everyone wants to figure out what it is, and why it's so hard to use effectively. So so when we rolled out the calendar, it's gone viral, like once or twice. I mean, first was organically in the Philadelphia region. We got a lot of sort of press, and made a bunch of sales in the Mid Atlantic, and then in 2023 we were uh, 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 my cousin, my cousin-in-law, Tommy, TikTok Tommy. He was graduating high school, and it was like the middle of the pandemic, and he's like, I want to be a social media influencer. And I was like, I want you to be too. And he was like, I'm gonna live in a bus, I'm gonna drive around the country. And it just reminded me so much of
Yeah.
when I started doing stand-up comedy and kind of
Right.
struck out on adventure and hit the road. And I was like, dude, like I'll I'll make sure you have gas in your bus. You just got to make TikTok videos about the calendar for me. And so he did it, and then a couple of them went viral, and so we got a few million plus view videos off it. And
Wow.
that that also, I mean, the sales have been coming in from that, and so it really provided a um, the like the viability is there, like, you know what I mean, like people are interested in the product. Biggest feedback that I get is, hey, this is great, I like a calendar, but I don't use a wall calendar anymore, I use my phone. And
Sure.
so yeah, and so that's a issue where I've had to go back to the drawing board, and we're developing an app, probably about 80% complete. um, and we're going to roll that out, hopefully sooner than later. And uh, you know from there, just keep on growing. Like, I like to view our company as a high tech company in Silicon Valley, even though we're not funded like one, but we can definitely take the world by storm. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of been going over the sales, creating market personas off of who's been buying it, getting the feedback from the users, and trying to just build and maintain momentum, while we build the app, and get that out to everybody.
Interesting. It's like, what is your idea of time? So I know you kind of mentioned it's like a measurement. So is it like a measurement of eternity, so we can actually just track what's going on, or what is time exactly?
I mean, yeah, that's a time is, I mean, time is a human made construction, right,
Sure.
to help us make sense of the universe. And so that's why I say it's just a measurement, and to some degree just a distance, because a day is literally just the distance of a full rotation of the earth,
Right.
864,000 miles, or whatever, 80,
Right.
like, so. And then the year is just the full orbit of earth in a distance form. So in some ways, yeah, it's, but in other ways, I mean, you know again, we've created a bunch of languages and a bunch of um, logic loops to help us describe what we are, who we are, where we are, what's going on all around us. And in the end, I mean, no one really has any answer, and you're not going to get one. And the the vastness of eternity, and you know what is the core of, like, time. Is time Has time always been in existence, and a time before time,
Right.
and that sort of
Right.
stuff. That's again why the calendar was such a fascinating thing to go down, because it intersects with religion. And there's always sort of in my life, there's always seemed like there's this tension between science and religion,
Yeah.
where, like, I don't buy it. I think science and religion actually go a lot closer hand in hand than people give credit for, because science, the root of that word is skio, to know, and it's to know the face of God, right? And so that's all science has ever been, is to try to describe the universe, and what is going on all around us.
Yeah.
This beautiful place that's been built that we're in. And so
Yeah.
there's you know but at the same time, you know the deeper you get into that sort of stuff, I mean, you talk to physicists, and some of the top minds out there will say the more that they've researched, the deeper their faith has gotten, because the more beautiful this system is. And that's really how I felt when I started using this calendar and sort of living in it, and living in 5 seasons where everyone else is in 4, where like at that moment, at the March 3rd, March 4th, winter, spring, it's not like the leaves are, the flower petals are all out there, but you see the tiny little buds. You just notice these little beautiful moments in time that no one else does. And we're living in a very magnificent system. And so it's hard to say that we know it all when we can't even divide 365 properly.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's yeah. I just think science and religion are a lot closer than people give credit for. And part of the problem is like a scientist discovered DNA, right? It was Mendel and his pea plants that discovered how to hybrid make larger pea plants, and kicked off that whole field of study. The last time the calendar got updated, Galileo hadn't even started studying mathematics, and he founded the entire
Wow.
field of physics. So,
Right.
and he got persecuted by the church for saying stuff that
Yes, he
that
did.
took it to its core. And so, it's one of those things that you can't.
He was on like house arrest, right? He couldn't leave his house.
Yeah, he couldn't leave his house. He had to recant a bunch of his work. He had to. I mean, it wasn't fun at all. And I mean, that's why I've said a lot where I can't be the first person that's like done simple math and divided 365 to its base factors and been like, oh, there's only 5 and 73. But like, I
Sure.
think I might be one of the only people that's ever done it and been able to do it to the effect that I've done it, because we live in a time and a place where we are allowed to question systems openly. We are allowed to say things like, hey, I think the calendar, that the Pope created in 1582 is horse hockey, and we should revisit it and maybe use modern math and science. So there's a lot of power in time and in controlling people's time, and that's why the entire existence of the Gregorian calendar, it's always been controlled by either a king, a dictator, or a pope. And there's one time that I saw in all of the research where so it was called the Flavian Reforms, and it was this guy in ancient Rome. The priests and the priestesses of a certain temple controlled the calendar, and they would publish it every at the beginning of every month. And so it's like, hey, it's April now. Here's April's version of the calendar, and it's May. Here's May's version of the calendar. And what they started doing is, if there was a dictator or a Caesar in power that they liked, they would extend each month by a few days, and then not issue the next month's preprint until 4 or 5 days have gone by. They'd just be like, oh, you must have lost count on your, here's, we're on top of it. Here's May. So they would extend rulers' reigns by multiple weeks up to a month. And then if there was a ruler that they didn't like, they did the exact opposite, and they would issue the calends a little bit earlier. So what Flavian did is, he said, we're publishing the whole thing, all of it, all up front. And he was like, this is mayhem on commerce. This is mayhem on people just trying to live their life. And he got met with a lot of pushback within the temple, because they were like, you're giving up so much power. And his whole thing was, it's better so that the people have some sort of regularity and something that they can depend on, rather than us basically manipulating manipulating their minds.
Sure.
Yeah, we're kind of getting to the top of the hour, man. It sounds like there's so much more we could go into, but yeah, like before we get out of here, did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, get me wound up talking about time, and I get all sorts of going. I'm sorry. No, I really appreciate y'all having me on here. If you all want to learn more, anyone out there wants to learn more about it, thenewcalendar.com is the website. I think there's a TEDx talk on there that probably succinctly gives you a little bit better overview, and a dip into my history as well. But yeah, otherwise, I just really appreciate y'all taking the time and having me on.
It was amazing having you on. We'll have to have you back so we can dive a little deeper into some of these subjects because you're just getting started.
Yeah,
Sounds like a plan.
exactly. You kind of you're just revving us up, and now we're already at the top of the hour.
I'm sorry. Well, y'all wanted to take a deep dive, and we started back in the day. Take me down memory lane. I liked it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that's what we like to do. We like to, find things that really bring joy out of people and let them express it.
Well, it's kind of like like a cartoon. You leave on a cliffhanger so they'll come back.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, I can't wait. I'll be there. I'll be there dangling in midair.
And we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.